Hi everyone, my name is Maddie Barkus, for those of you that don't know me, and today my presentation is going to be on Florida's toxic algae and the red tide. Um, so to begin, the red tide is something that is happening in the coast of Florida, and it's also happening in Texas right now. But it's a persistent, harmful algal bloom that occurs when colonies of algae grow out of control. And when they do grow, they're growing at a really fast, rapid rate. This red tide is depleting the coast water of its oxygen, and it's releasing toxins that are really dangerous and chemical induced. There are three types of algae associated with this red tide, the three that are listed below. Um, but the main one that we're going to focus on today is the Karenia brevis. Um, So, how does this red tide actually happen? Um, there are many reasons for the cause of red tide. One of the reasons is nutrient content. The nutrient content in ocean water is always altered due to many things, human activity, boat activity, etc. Um, Another reason is the water and wind currents. Some studies have indicated that algae species flourish when wind and water currents are favorable. However, most recent studies have showed that overfeeding is the main cause of these algal blooms. Overfeeding is a term that refers to the buildup of nutrient content such as phosphorus, nitrogen, carbon, etc. And these contents are coming from sources that are like from people's houses, their lawns, farmlands, and all of these contents are flowing downriver and into the sea, and they're building at a rate that overfeeds the algae. As this happens, algae is going to be overfed and grow at a really fast, rapid rate. Now that we know how it happens, I want to talk about who is affected by this. Marine life and, believe it or not, humans are the two main categories that are at risk during these red tide events. Marine life is heavily affected by these algal blooms. The reason being for this is because many animals, such as dolphins and manatees, are really susceptible to the toxins that are produced for Karenia brevis. A study conducted in 2005 addressed marine mortality rates in mammals during red tide events. In the spring of 2002, 32 endangered manatees died in southwest Florida, and 107 bottlenose dolphins died in waters off the panhandle of Florida in the spring of 2004. As stated below, further tests and examinations of these animals and the toxins showed that they were present within the tissues and fluids of the animals. So out of 63 of the animals, 27 being manatees and 36 dolphins, they all had really high concentrations of the Karenia brevis in their tissues and muscles. And so this only further confirms that the animals must have been exposed to this toxin that was produced during the red tide. And in this picture, you can see manatees, and below is the Karenia brevis that is affecting these animals. So the next one I want to talk about is how humans are at risk and why should we really care about it. Not only are the marine animals at risk, but we are too. A lot of seafood that we're eating, oysters or scallops, they might be carrying these potent marine neurotoxins. As these fish are living in the water, they're filter feeding off of the algae and the phytoplankton that exists within the waters, and they are carrying the toxin themselves in their bodies. A study conducted in 2005 examined the red tide toxins and their effects on humans, and they made the argument that these toxins are not easily detected right away through these fish, and they can't be removed by food preparation, such as cooking or boiling the fish in high heats. Another reason that humans might be at risk is due to inhalation exposure. In the same study I mentioned above, this study also identified a group of healthy individuals who were occupationally exposed to the aerosols during the red tide events. This population consisted of full-time lifeguards working on Florida's Gulf Coast, and they were willing to participate in this study. These lifeguards were interviewed using a questionnaire comprising questions about their health history and their demographics, etc. There was a pre and post-shift baseline where there was no red tide, and they would answer questions about their health and their respiratory symptoms and whatnot. The same survey was also conducted during a time where the red tide was present. The lifeguards found a significant increased self-report of respiratory symptoms after completing an 8-hour shift during the red tide, and no increase in symptoms after completing a shift where there was an absence of Florida red tide. So this just kind of also confirms that during the red tide, many individuals are experiencing symptoms, and it can be very detrimental on their health. There's also been a significant amount of data that shows reports of respiratory illnesses, rashes, eye irritations, and much more. So there seems to be a lot of data that shows how dangerous and detrimental this red tide occurrence is. So what is being done about this? So this picture here just shows the Florida's coast, and shows in the red you can see all the affected areas that have high concentrations of this Carenia brevis. And as you can see, this was within 1 week in 2018. So what is being done about this, and what can we do about it? So scientists are working to predict these harmful algal blooms, such by using satellite imagery, which can work to predict and detect the blooms before they get to reach the coast, so they can see it further out before it actually becomes into the coast and can be affecting people, humans, fish, etc. So another method they're using is by testing water samples. So researchers and scientists who work for the NOAA, which is the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, they're taking water samples and testing cells and seeing if they can predict or forecast the intensity of the event before it again reaches the coast. However, the biggest preventative measure that is being done right now is making people aware of this issue and what's going on. A study conducted in 2010 addressed the knowledge of the general public about Florida's red tide. This was a questionnaire type of study, so again, people were just going around and asking questions about what they knew about the red tide, if they knew it was harmful, what it can do to a person, etc. In this study, they found that there were major gaps in the public knowledge, consisting both of residents and tourists regarding the issues. So it is extremely important to be aware of the situation before traveling to coasts where this event might be occurring. Again, the picture on the left is showing where the places in Florida have been affected, so it is very important to just be aware of where it's happening, and before you go and travel there, before a family member goes and travels there, just being aware of what can happen. So next I want to talk about some frequently asked questions about the red tide. Many people, after hearing about it, will ask, okay, well, is it still safe to go to the beach? So obviously, as the picture I just showed last, some areas are more affected than other areas. It is important to check these beach forecast and conditions reporting systems before attending these beaches if you are going to Florida. They're being updated. I don't know. Currently, they're being updated, but during the time of 2018, they were being updated twice a week in the affected areas. So many people were aware of the concentrations before they were attending beaches. So the next one, what do I do if I notice sick, injured, or dead wildlife? Obviously, if you see an injured or hurt animal, don't touch these animals. You can just report them to the wildlife alert hotline. There's local hotlines all over the state of Florida. So if you, again, are going to be traveling there, it's important to be aware of these and know the numbers in case you do come across these animals. So the next question, how long will this red tide last? There's no way right now to state for sure how long this event is going to last. Um, each bloom is usually between the months of August and December. However, like I said, the fall of 2018 reported the bloom to be a little different than most of the other reported blooms, and that's because of its timing, its duration, and size. It had been completely different than what had been reported in previous blooms. So, again, there's no way to test for sure how long this event will last, but it is extremely important to take preventative measures upon oneself. I mean, if you're going to be traveling to the areas, um, know the concentrations, know the areas that are affected, um, know the phone numbers and the hotlines to call if you do come across it. It's extremely important to take these measures upon yourself when traveling to these areas. Scientists are doing everything they can and working to predict and prevent these harmful algal blooms. But with your attention, you can obviously put a dent in this issue as well. And this is my works cited page. These are a list of all of the articles that I used if you want to take a look at those too. And if you have any questions, feel free to message me. My email is mbarkus8755@westfield.ma.edu. Thank you guys for listening, and again, feel free to message me if you have any questions. Thanks.